Welcome to Life and Love in the Q, a podcast for the LGBTQIA2S plus community, those who support them, and those who just want to learn more.
Together we share the stories and the science of the space and grace to live life in full color.
I'm Jillian Abby, proud lesbian and mother, Hay House author, queer blogger, and TikTok something or other.
And I'm Treisha Peterson. I'm an LGBTQ ally, proud mom of 6, professor and researcher of identity and the social narratives that impact the way we live and love.
So open your mind, open your heart, and welcome to Life and Love in the Q.
Good morning, Jill. How are you today?
I'm fine. We're fine.
I'm fine.
How are you?
Remember that F word. That's the F word of ultimate F words.
Not my favorite, but yeah.
I know. I'm in a funny place right now. And so I want to know what your relationship to anxiety and panic is. Panic attacks.
Well, that's a great question. So obviously I've been quite type A plus plus, if you will, for most of my life. And as a perfectionist, and then into a recovering perfectionist. And I've tried to move myself to like an A minus B plus. I know that's not really a personality type. But one thing I thought was interesting about when I came out is I also found that I was experiencing or noticing feelings of anxiety that I hadn't really felt or identified before in my life. And while I would like to say that I've gotten control of them and they've decreased since coming out, I actually find that sometimes it feels like more or like it's changing. And I know we've got a whole lot of I came out and COVID hit. I changed careers. There was a whole lot that happened in that time frame. And now looking at my life, I have a book coming out very soon. And as much as I'm so excited about that, I'm also finding I'm having new feelings of anxiety about all the promo and putting myself out there. And so it's funny that you mentioned panic attacks because I think I just had my first panic attack the other day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. And it was right before I was supposed to record a podcast with another podcaster that I love. I was excited about the topic. I'm in the shower getting ready. And all of a sudden I felt my chest clenched, and then my heart was beating really hard, and then it felt like I was trying to gulp in air. And it was so strange to me because obviously I'm comfortable podcasting, right? This is what we do. So the fact that it had come up, that I was suddenly having these feelings of panic and paralysis, crying like nobody's business in the shower, like completely red nosed, really caught me off guard. And it was really scary. And I'm like, holy crap, is this a panic attack? Because I've heard of them, but I've never had one before. I'm hoping you have some thoughts on that.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, but as you're telling me this story of yours, the thing that keeps coming to mind, and I think we talked about this before, but there's something when we're talking about identity that's called the uncertainty model of identity. And it's anytime there's a transition or a change in our lives, we kind of end up in like this void space, this place where we're not really sure what's going to come next. And it's all sorts of places: divorce, coming out of the closet, moving to a new job, graduating from high school. Any kind of life transition puts us in this really weird space where it can be hard to find solid ground. And in that space, like the most adaptive, the most growth-centered thing to do is to pause, to actually stop and really ask yourself, what part of my old life is dying away and what do I not really know about my future? And it's like when we can name what feels uncertain in our lives, then we're better able to kind of tame that spiral of thoughts that gets completely out of control in our heads, like this whole overwhelm.
Yeah.
I had heard of panic attacks in my life, and I knew that the DSM has a diagnosis for anxiety disorder. So I kind of knew all of these things existed on like the mental health, mental distress categories, but I actually didn't realize that I had anxiety or panic attacks. And over the past couple of years, and I love that you actually brought up COVID happened and all these other things happened. I think what a lot of people don't realize right now is COVID happened, and even though it happened at a global level, it really did shake up our sense of secure foundations. But then it wasn't really just COVID. Like, you guys had hurricanes in Tampa over the past couple of years. Texas has had 3 ice storms that have shut us down for days in a row. And then there's all the other stuff too. Like, if everybody sat down for just a minute and wrote a list of all of the global or local significant events that have happened since March 2020, I would assume that most people would be able to come up with a list of like 20 things that have been big.
Oh, yeah.
Like big things since 2020. So our lives are kind of uncertain, and we all keep trying to get back to this place of normalcy. But those who are faring the best are those who were able to kind of stop and reframe what the future was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I knew that I'd started having more significant panicky type attacks after 2020 also, but I just went back to my therapist, and her and I are trying to deal with just a couple of, I'm having some ruminative thoughts that I'm really struggling to get out of these thoughts. So that's kind of why I went back to her. But her and I have been talking a lot over the past couple of weeks, and she has suggested to me that she thinks maybe I've had a high level panic disorder most of my life, and that all of these things, all of these things across my life since my mom died that were really being diagnosed as other stuff. She, as we look back, she's saying that was a panic attack. That was a panic attack. And like, to the point of, I used to pass out and nobody could figure out why I was passing out. And I went to all sorts of doctors to figure out what was making me pass out. And as we've been talking, she said, you were having just a really intense, severe panic attack. And so it's really made me curious about like what people's relationship is with anxiety and panic. And maybe we don't really talk about what it looks like to have an anxiety attack or a panic attack. And why is it so easy to misdiagnose? Like I said, I went to so many doctors.
I do think that's so interesting, because there are a lot of people now, at least in my realm, my bubble, who say, oh, my anxiety is really bad right now. I have anxiety. And I almost feel like it seems like everyone is using the term. And so that almost like when people say it, it almost gets dismissed of like, no, you're just stressed. But really, I do think there is a really high level of anxiety amongst people, but also I think we're starting to realize that anxiety shows up in very different ways in different people. And so I think that's really interesting what your therapist was saying too, about pinpointing, like, fainting, panic attack.
Yeah. Well, and extreme crying. Like I remember one time sitting in the car with my then husband, and we were driving home from somewhere. We were actually driving home from the temple. The Mormons have they go to a temple and blah, but we were actually driving home from the temple, and we were contemplating maybe a life decision or something. I'm not even sure what. I don't really remember what we were working on, but I was really struggling with a personal decision at the time. And I'm not sure that he really understood the depths of that decision. So, but anyway, we were driving home, and I could not hold my tears in. And I was crying so uncontrollably. And he was trying, like, what's the matter? What's going on? Like, are you okay? I mean, he was trying to make sense of it, but the more he talked to me, like, I got to a point where I wanted to jump out of the car, no matter how fast I was going.
Yes, it's like, shut up.
Yes,
you're not helping. And you don't want to say that either. They're trying to help. They're trying to be loving, but it's like, shut up.
Yeah. And really, honestly, it probably would have, I mean, I'm not advising that people jump out of a car moving 75 miles an hour. I'm not advising that. So don't, man. But it probably would have done me a lot of good to jump out of the car and run around a little bit, like, and do something with that energy that was just circulating in my mind. But trying to sit there and calm me down was really just counterproductive at the time. But I didn't even realize that extreme, like those emotions that just come on so fast that you just break down in tears and you can't stop crying.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple thoughts, but one of my biggest thoughts right now, and I know I've kind of talked about this a lot, but I think since COVID, also like just the virtual conversation about you should be able to positive mindset your way out of this, or
Mhm.
like even like the EFT tapping, I know is a big thing right now. Hypnotherapy is a really big thing right now. And the more that I'm learning about these panic attacks, the more that I'm realizing that none of those are actually helpful for somebody in a panic attack, in an active panic attack,
Yeah.
but also in treating panic disorder. But I think a lot of us have more anxiety than we're giving words to. And because the social narrative all around us is, well, just meditate or breathe or pray. Like there's all these like these homespun
Quick fixes.
remedies. Yeah, quick
Right.
fixes. But you're
Right.
right. I don't think anybody's actually saying to us, can you talk about that anxiety a little bit? Or we're asking
Right.
people, what can I do to help? And if you're in the middle of an anxiety or panic attack, having to come up with something in your mind to tell somebody that you need for help is just like a
Right.
whole new layer of overwhelm.
Right. Waffles. I need waffles right now. Bring me waffles. I'm just
Or-
saying that on the podcast so that if anyone sees me having a panic attack, they know what to start preparing right now, because I won't be able to come up with that in the moment. But no,
Well,
I know what you mean. There is no like rational thought to it, and there's no words that anyone can say where you're like, oh, good, I'm snapped out of it.
yeah.
It's a process at least for me, it took a little while to get myself to a place where I'm like, get back in your body, you're safe. Like, I don't know. It's hard. Scary.
Yeah. And I think that as we talk about a lot, I think that so the whole coming out experience is an uncertain life change. Like we really don't know what's going to happen, but it can happen in all those ripples that we've talked about before. So every person that fits in one of those ripples also has uncertainty about what their future is going to look like.
Right.
And I think as a society, we're not very good listeners anymore because we're actively trying to figure out where our place is, So like if my example is going to be like, if I come to you and I say, Jill, I'm having a panic attack, and I start spitting all of my thoughts out at you, our natural way of believing right now is that then you're going to try to grab hold of some of those things for me and fix them for me.
Mm.
Then that just pulls you into my panic attack instead of like you just being a safe space for me to dump all of this information.
Yeah.
And you don't have to fix it any more than I have to fix anything. It's just having this safe space where we can word vomit. And now those words are like out in the open and they don't have to circulate in me anymore. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
Or
in
fixers.
trying to think back to that moment, I do think I just had to let all of everything that was spinning in my mind, just get it all out.
Yeah.
And Jen is such a magical human being because I don't know, I just feel like she's very intuitive and sometimes knowing how to respond. And she just gave me a very solid and firm, unmoving hug, like almost like a co-regulating type of like, you keep talking and I'm just going to hold you so you can feel that you're in your body still. And it just really helped in my case. I don't know. I mean, I would love to hear more about your experiences too. Like, what do you need besides to jump out of a car?
Honestly, that is, as I think about all of the times that I know I've been like in a pre-panic state, like kind of what you were saying, it was working its way up.
Mm-hmm.
You were in the tears, you were in the craziness of all of the thoughts. I remember that was always what I wanted most, was just to sit next to somebody and just like lay my head on their shoulders and just vomit, But like I said, so many of us think that in order to vomit, so if we're the ones being vomited on, word vomited on, thought vomited on, then we tend to want to fix it. And then that's when we dysregulate one another. But I love that how you're explaining. Jen just sat there She wasn't trying to talk you out of any of it. Because again, think about how many times somebody might come to us, our kids, this happens with our kids all the time. They come and tell us that they're afraid of the test, or they're afraid of the tryout, or they're nervous. And we try to talk them out of it by saying things like, oh, you'll be great. You'll be fine. You're so good. But when the mind is spinning in that fear place, you can't automatically put a person in fear and try to pull them into peace. Sometimes they just have to get out of fear. There's a long path from anxiety to stillness and calm. That's not like one step. That's a leap.
I totally agree. And it also I know this is a tangent and that's kind of our specialty, but it makes me think about what a fear state that so many people are in right now, just even in our society, in the conversations around politics and humans, and why it's so hard to just be able to come to the table and see what we agree on, because there are so many people in a fear state. And then there's people on the other side being like, don't be afraid. You don't need to fear trans people. You don't need to fear gay people. It's not but if you're in a fear state, you're not even hearing any of those words anyways.
Well, and a lot of those words I'm thinking, so I'm actually on a social media detox right now. I was realizing that I was having massive anxiety triggers every time I got on to my Facebook account, because I have so many people. I know I can unfriend, like blah, blah, blah. I've heard it all. I know I can unfriend. I know I can unfollow. Like, I know I have different ways to navigate it. But I have so many people that I hear say things like trauma is an illusion. Fear is an illusion. You're making this all up. It's all in your brain. And I just want to strangle people right now, because like the people who are in Ohio right now trying to decide, can I go home or can I not go home? That's a real fear. They're not making that up.
Right.
There was a massive toxic spill that changed their community forever. Now, will things work out one day? Yes. Right? Like we all know that.
Sure.
We can manifest to our heart's desire that one day that will work out. But today, those people's lives have just changed. And I'm so tired of hearing the shaming on social media about, it's just a new way to polarize our society, in my opinion. Like religion calls it right and wrong, good and bad. Right now, I think the spirituality woo-woo community is calling it high vibe, low vibe, but it's still polarity.
Right. Same thing, different words.
Yeah, I don't care. And like, how many people right now this is my tangent. I have so many people right now who post things like, well, my guides told me that it's all going to be okay. Or my guides told me that you need to join my program and I'm going to convince, then I'm going to be able to help you out of your fear. And it's just another way to say, my higher self told me that I'm going to be okay. But we can't, like, all of these ways that social media is creating this hierarchy of who is the owner of wisdom and who is the owner of fear. And it's just, I think that's making it all the more complicated. And I actually was just teaching a class a couple of days ago, and we talked about social media. And one of the big risk factors right now with social media is, we already know this from the statistics, and this has been 20-year-old research, but we know that people get on social media when they are feeling their most vulnerable. People actually don't start scrolling on social media when they are feeling high-level purpose in their lives. It's like when we're feeling a little bit low, or we're feeling lonely, or we're just kind of feeling that blah feeling. That's when we grab our phones and just almost on autopilot start scrolling our social media. But we're scrolling our social media thinking we're actually going to find connection. But because of the way social media now is used as such kind of as a marketing game, what we're really doing is we're getting a sales job. A lot of sales job. But because we're coming in a vulnerable state and we're expecting connection, we're very easily, the article that I read, it was a research study, and what they're saying is that social media marketing, specifically what they're calling subconscious marketing, is actually akin to grooming of sexual abuse. So it's the same as like it's having the same effect on people who are in vulnerable situations, in vulnerable populations. It's having the same mind fuck as a groomer would have on a young child who is being sexually groomed.
Wow.
So,
well, I will
that's
say,
intense.
yeah, I'll even say from the business perspective, from having worked as a copywriter and worked with a lot of people who work in the social media industry, it's fascinating how many people tap out of it because they're like, it feels gross. It doesn't feel good. I have never met a social media manager who is like, I love social media. Like, it's fun at times. It's fun being creative. It's fun delivering something where people go, oh, wow, that was really cool. And yet at the same time, it feels so not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love too that you mentioned how, and I guess I never thought of it that way, how we do reach for our phones when we're in our most vulnerable states, because I get an alert that pops up on my phone weekly that lets me know how much time I've spent on average on my screen for the day.
Mm.
And it is absolutely a mood barometer for me because I'll see that number and it's sometimes shocking of how like you've spent 10, 11 hours a day with your phone engaged.
Yeah.
That was a really bad week for me, you know. And then there's sometimes where it's like, oh, you spent 2 hours today on your phone. And it's like, yeah, because I was out and I was doing things and creating and napping, whatever. I don't know. But it is one of those little things that I look at as if I start spending too much time on my phone, it's like, hold up, we're starting to enter like, this is my canary in the coal mine. Is how much time am I spending on my phone?
And I think your point is exactly true. Like if you think about the times when you are really living a good life, and I'm not talking like money and all of that, but like you are really engaged in things you love. I never feel drawn to check Facebook or Instagram when I'm in yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Like never.
Yep.
I don't even worry about what somebody's doing or thinking or anything. I never feel drawn to look at my phone on. As a matter of fact, like when I go to the beach and I know, people love to post their vacation pictures, I can go a full week without even thinking about Facebook, Instagram, social media, because I'm so enraptured in the moment. I could care less about pulling up my phone, even for photos.
Yeah. Same. I know. There's so many trips that I've left now where I was like, oh, I didn't capture a single moment.
Yeah.
But we were just in it, our family was just in it and loving it. And so, it happens.
Yeah. So I think that if I have anything I want to leave with our listeners, because I kind of think we jumped around a lot, but I kind of want to draw some attention to the fact that anxiety and panic, even though there might be a lot of people who are experiencing it, it's not a normal state of being. Like if you find yourself having consistent anxiety attacks or consistent panic attacks, that really is a sign of an overstimulated nervous system, a sign of burnout, a sign of early stage depression that really you might want to get some sort of help with that is above and beyond meditate. Don't meditate your way out of an anxiety attack, please, oh, please, oh, please, podcast listeners, because it can just feed it worse. There are times that meditation is wonderful. In the middle of an anxiety attack is not that time.
Yeah. And I almost think too, and you can share what you think on this, but if anxiety is something that is persistent or increasing in your life also, I think so many people just try and DIY their health. Like, I'll fix this. This is on me. I just need to eat more kale and drink more water and meditate. But I have also realized how important it is to have, like, I have a life coach that I talk to who helps me reframe, not when I'm in the panic moments, but once I'm out of them, we can reflect back to try and keep me from sliding back into those more anxious moments. I love somato emotional release body work, like craniosacral therapy, that feels like that chaotic energy that's inside can finally be released. But I want to hear a little bit more too about what you recommend or how you deal with your own anxiety.
So I have a couple of thoughts, but one of the things and what is so weird to me is like how you can know some of this stuff, but when it's happening to you, you can't see it.
100%.
So, yeah. So that's like I'm a firm believer that we need to understand our own mental, emotional, spiritual, physical health for ourselves. But we really do have to increase the language around this because the people next to us also need to understand it so that they can keep themselves safe too. So there's like two sides to this story. But one of the things, as much as I have studied anxiety, depression, all of these distresses, one thing I had never heard that my therapist just told me is that when you're in an inpatient clinic for anxiety or depression, or like you're at a risk factor for self-harm, they make you eat every 3 hours. And the thing that she explained to me, and like I said, I had never heard this, but she said the thing that I'm not even going to say low grade, but the thing that anxiety will do, that fight or flight instinct, is it will automatically make you lose your appetite so that you're ready to run because we're a little bit more sluggish when we have food in our belly.
Right. It's like running the 5K before Thanksgiving dinner as opposed to after.
Yes. And so
very different.
Anxiety will convince us that we're not hungry. And so we skip meals. And then when we're hungry from skipping meals, the anxiety says, see, we're starving. We're in a dangerous situation. So there's even more reason to panic. And then there's more reason to panic. So we don't eat. And it just perpetuates. And like for me, I was hitting an anxiety attack right at wake up. So the moment I was waking up in the morning, I was already in an anxiety attack, like in that very beginning layers. So I was skipping meals. And what she said is, she said, no. Well, and then I was doing something bad and I was actually drinking a green tea shake. I've been drinking this green tea chocolate smoothie every single day for, I don't even know, 4 years.
Okay.
So the very first thing I was putting in my system was a stimulant. And then I was skipping meals because anxiety was telling me I wasn't hungry. So I was like in this, this immediate loop that I didn't even recognize. So she said that they eat every 3 hours and they have to get up and take a 20-minute walk every 3 hours. And that keeps you in your body. And I think that's awesome. And actually, I tried both of those things this past week and significantly better for me. I used to meditate first thing in the morning, and now I wait an hour and a half before I meditate. And that, for some reason, seems to be helping because at that point, I've already moved my body, I've stretched, and I've eaten. And then now I sit down and I meditate. So I just changed my morning a teeny little bit to see if I could navigate that.
This is so fascinating. I guess I never really made the connection between food intake, but also the digestive process. And anxiety in our nervous system. And I think this just really goes back to what I was saying about waffles. You just need to throw waffles at it.
Just throw a waffle at it.
Just throw that. The moral of this episode is we can combat anxiety by throwing a high quality waffle at it.
There you have it.
Yes. Dr. Treisha, I know we talked about, so we have our Patreon community where people can join on for a very reasonable price, and we provide bonus content. And so we're going to continue this conversation over in our Patreon and talk more about physical activity and the role that plays as well in managing anxiety. So thank you so much for sharing.
You bet. I hope it was good. I hope now you know a little bit more about my panic.
I feel better already. All right. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Life and Love in the Q. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And if you have questions, contact us at lifeandloveintheq@gmail.com. Until next time, Q Crew.